I've never liked going to Walmart late at night. The place just feels different when the crowds are gone, the aisles almost deserted, and the employees half hidden behind their pallets, restocking shelves in silence. But sometimes, you don't have a choice. It was just past midnight when I pulled into the Walmart parking lot. I'd been putting off this trip all week, and of course, it had to be done when I was bone tired and the rest of the world was asleep. The parking lot was vast, stretching out in front of the store like a deserted wasteland. A few scattered cars were parked under the dim glow of streetlights, their shadows long and distorted against the cracked pavement. The fluorescent lights from inside the store flickered out into the dark, and despite the brightness, the whole place felt shrouded in gloom. I don't know why I felt uneasy. I'd been to Walmart 100 times at night, but tonight, the silence was thick and a nagging sense of discomfort settled into the pit of my stomach. The sound of my car door slamming shut echoed in the empty lot, and as I locked it, I instinctively glanced over my shoulder. Nothing. Just shadows and silence. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was just being paranoid. I had a short list of things to grab: printer ink, coffee, some snacks. No big deal. But even as I made my way across the parking lot, the hair on the back of my neck prickled as if someone was watching me. As I neared the entrance, I heard it, a faint rustling sound. My footsteps faltered and I glanced to my left where rows of parked cars lined the side of the lot. At first, I didn't see anything. But then, from behind one of the cars, a figure emerged. He stepped out slowly, almost deliberately, as if he'd been waiting for me. His clothes were rumpled, his hair wild and unkempt. The man looked disheveled, like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes, wide, bloodshot, locked onto mine, and a chill ran down my spine. I tried to tell myself it was just another late-night shopper, someone who had no doubt wandered out for cigarettes or beer. But there was something off about the way he was looking at me. His gaze wasn't casual. It was intense, like he was trying to figure something out about me. I felt exposed under his scrutiny, like he could see right through me. I forced a smile and kept walking, quickening my pace toward the automatic doors. I told myself he would leave me alone, that he wasn't really paying attention to me. But just as I was about to reach the entrance, I heard his voice, hoarse and slurred, like he'd been yelling for hours. "Hey man," he called out, "you got a minute?" I froze. His tone wasn't friendly. It was demanding, almost desperate. I turned around slowly, my heart starting to beat a little faster. "Sorry," I mumbled. I'm in a hurry." But the man didn't take the hint. He took a step forward, his eyes never leaving mine. No, just a second," he insisted, his voice rough and uneven. "I need to ask you something." There was something about the way he said it that made my skin crawl. His tone was insistent, as if he wasn't asking for a favor. He was demanding my attention. And those wild eyes, they never blinked. I should have just walked away. I knew that. But I didn't want to be rude, and a part of me thought that maybe, just maybe, I was overreacting. So I stopped. "Yeah?" I asked, my voice tight with nerves. He closed the distance between us, standing too close for comfort. The smell hit me first. Sweat, alcohol, something rotten and sour, like he hadn't bathed in days. I tried to take a step back, but he matched my movement, his eyes still locked onto mine. Do you know what time it is?" he asked. But there was something strange about the way he said it, like it wasn't really a question. I glanced at my phone, hoping to diffuse the situation quickly. "It's 12:15. I replied, my voice barely steady. He nodded slowly, but his eyes never left my face. 12:15, he repeated, his voice soft now, almost like he was talking to himself. "That's a good time, real good time." My unease turned into full-blown dread. What the hell did that mean? I tried to back away again, but he stepped forward, closing the gap even more. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the weight of the situation settling over me like a suffocating blanket. "I really need to get inside," I said, my voice firm, though my nerves were fraying fast. "Have a good night." I turned to leave, but his hand shot out and grabbed my arm, his grip tight and clammy. I froze, my breath catching in my throat as I looked down at his fingers wrapped around my sleeve. He wasn't just holding me, he was clutching me, like I was the only thing keeping him tethered to reality. "You can't leave," he whispered, his voice shaking now. "You don't understand. They're watching us." I felt a cold wave of fear wash over me. Who? I stammered, trying to pull my arm free. Who's watching? He leaned in closer, his breath hot and foul against my face. Them, he hissed. The ones in the cars, the ones who hide in the shadows. My mind raced. This guy wasn't just creepy, he was unhinged. My heart pounded louder, and I knew I had to get away from him, fast. I forced a laugh, trying to keep my voice light, even though I could feel the panic rising in my throat. Yeah, okay, I said, but I've really got to go. I hope you get some help, man. This time, I yanked my arm free with a little more force, taking a quick step back. His eyes widened as I did, and for a split second, I thought he might lunge at me, but he didn't. Instead, he just stood there, his wide, unblinking eyes following me as I hurried away. I didn't look back until I was almost to the entrance, but when I did, I saw him standing exactly where I'd left him, staring at me with that same unsettling intensity. My hands were shaking as I grabbed a cart and headed inside. The bright lights of the store felt almost too harsh now, the aisles too wide, too exposed. My mind was racing, replaying the encounter over and over again. I needed to get what I came for and leave. Printer ink, coffee, snacks, just focus. But as I walked through the store, I couldn't stop glancing toward the entrance. My nerves were on edge, and every slight movement made me jump. I kept telling myself that I was safe now, that he wasn't going to follow me inside. But I was wrong. I had just grabbed a bag of chips when I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye. I turned, and there he was, standing at the end of the aisle. He wasn't looking at the shelves. He wasn't pretending to shop. He was looking directly at me. A cold sweat broke out across my forehead as I quickly turned away, my heart racing. He hadn't moved, hadn't said anything, but his presence was enough to send waves of fear crashing over me. I grabbed the rest of the items on my list as quickly as I could, practically running to the self-checkout. My hands fumbled with the machine as I scanned my items, my eyes darting nervously toward the entrance. He was gone again, but I didn't feel any relief. The moment I finished paying, I grabbed my bag and hurried toward the exit. I didn't want to think about where he was or what he was doing. I just needed to get to my car and get the hell out of there. But as soon as I stepped outside, I saw him again. He was standing by the row of parked cars, his wild eyes fixed on me. He wasn't moving, just standing there, waiting. My pulse quickened, and I made a beeline for my car, keeping my head down and trying to avoid eye contact. My mind raced, trying to come up with excuses, with ways to de-escalate if he approached me again. But this time, there was no avoiding it. The moment I reached my car, he started walking toward me, his footsteps slow and deliberate. I unlocked the car as fast as I could, practically throwing myself inside and slamming the door shut. My hands were shaking so badly that I fumbled with the key for a moment before finally starting the engine. But just as I put the car in reverse, he appeared at my window. His face was twisted with some kind of wild, manic anger, his mouth moving but the words coming out incoherent. He slammed his hands against the window, the force rattling the glass. I jumped, my heart racing in my chest. "Open the door," he screamed, his voice high-pitched and desperate. "You have to let me in! They're coming! They're coming!" I threw the car into reverse and hit the gas, but he didn't back away. He slammed his fists against the window again, his eyes wide with panic and fury. I could barely breathe as I pulled out of the parking spot, my foot slamming on the gas pedal as I sped toward the exit. In the rearview mirror, I could see him chasing after me, his arms flailing wildly, but he was no match for the car. I didn't stop until I was a few blocks away. Even when I was far from the store, my hands still trembled on the wheel. I couldn't get the image of his wild eyes out of my head, the way he had screamed, the way he had pounded on the window like he was trying to break through. I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see his figure running after me, even though I knew that was impossible. The streets were empty, quiet, but my mind was filled with the memory of his voice. "They're coming." Who was he talking about? Who did he think was watching him? It didn't matter. I just needed to get home, lock the doors, and try to forget this ever happened. But as the days passed, the memory of that night lingered. I found myself glancing over my shoulder whenever I walked through parking lots. I started checking the backseat of my car before getting in, convinced that someone was watching me. I never went back to that Walmart. And even though I haven't seen him since that night, his voice still echoes in my mind. I wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary when I went to Walmart that afternoon. It was just a quick stop after work, a routine errand, really. I needed a few things for dinner and figured I'd be in and out within half an hour. The store wasn't particularly busy, and I liked that. It gave me space to move through the aisles without feeling crowded. The automatic doors slid open with that familiar whoosh of air, and the cool blast of air conditioning hit my face as I stepped inside. I grabbed a cart and started my usual route through the store, produce first, then down the snack aisle, and finally over to the dairy section. Nothing unusual. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed softly, and the quiet hum of conversation filled the background. Everything was perfectly mundane. It wasn't until I made it to the frozen food section that I noticed him. I can't explain what made me glance up at that moment, but when I did, my eyes locked with his. He was standing at the end of the aisle, partially hidden by the freezer doors, just watching me. I couldn't quite make out his face. His baseball cap was pulled low over his eyes, but the way he stood there motionless with his hands shoved into his pockets sent a small ripple of unease through me. I quickly looked away, brushing it off. Maybe he was just waiting for someone, or deciding on what to buy. I kept moving, tossing a bag of frozen vegetables into my cart and turning down another aisle. But that feeling of being watched didn't go away. I moved to the pasta aisle next, trying to focus on what I needed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of movement. I glanced over, and there he was again, standing at the end of the aisle, just close enough to make me notice, but far enough away that it didn't seem too strange. My stomach tightened. This wasn't just a coincidence. He was following me. I tried to stay calm, convincing myself that I was overreacting. After all, it was a public store and people cross paths all the time, right? Still, I felt a twinge of unease that I couldn't ignore. I pushed my cart a little faster, trying to put some distance between us. Maybe if I made a few quick turns, I'd lose him in the maze of aisles. I turned down the cleaning supplies section, then the canned goods, weaving through the store with no real direction, just trying to shake that gnawing feeling that he was right behind me. But every time I thought I'd lost him, I'd glance over my shoulder, and there he was. I didn't understand why he was doing this. He never got close enough to speak to me, never made any overt gestures, but the way he shadowed me, always staying just within sight, made my skin crawl. It wasn't normal. It wasn't right. By the time I reached the toiletries aisle, my heart was racing. I needed to get out of here. I told myself that as soon as I grabbed what I needed, I'd head for the checkout and leave. It was probably nothing, just some creepy guy who didn't know how to act around women. But I didn't want to stick around to find out. As I tossed a bottle of shampoo into my cart, I felt it again, that unmistakable sensation of being watched. My skin prickled, and I looked up. This time, he wasn't at the end of the aisle. He was closer, much closer. He stood about 10 feet away, pretending to look at something on the shelf, but I could feel his eyes on me. My heart thudded in my chest, the air in the store suddenly feeling thick and stifling. I glanced around, hoping to see other shoppers nearby, but the aisle was empty. I debated what to do. Should I confront him? Ask if he needed something? But the idea of talking to him made my stomach turn. There was something about him, something off, and I didn't want to draw any more attention to myself than I already had. So, I did the only thing that made sense. I left. Abandoning my half-filled cart, I turned and walked quickly toward the front of the store, trying not to break into a run. My pulse was racing. I just needed to get to my car. Once I was in the parking lot, I could drive away and put this whole creepy encounter behind me. But as I neared the entrance, I glanced over my shoulder. He was following me again. My breath caught in my throat. He wasn't even pretending to shop anymore. He was walking directly behind me, his eyes locked on me with a cold intensity that sent a surge of panic through my body. My heart pounded in my ears as I pushed through the sliding doors and into the parking lot. The late afternoon sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the rows of cars. I could see my car just a few rows away, and I quickened my pace. My keys were already in my hand, my fingers shaking as I tried to steady my breathing. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel him behind me, his footsteps matching mine, closing the distance. I reached my car just as I heard the footsteps grow louder. Fumbling with the keys, I yanked the door open and threw myself inside, slamming it shut and locking the doors in one swift motion. My heart was hammering in my chest, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key into the ignition. But just as I started the engine, I looked up and saw him standing in front of my car. He was smiling. It wasn't a kind smile. It was something darker, something twisted. Like he knew how scared I was and enjoyed it. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, just staring at me through the windshield, his face half hidden in the fading light. I didn't move. I couldn't. Then, without warning, he turned and walked toward the car parked next to mine. My heart lurched as I realized he wasn't done yet. He was getting into his own car. Panic surged through me as I pulled out of the parking space, my tires squealing as I sped toward the exit. In the rearview mirror, I saw him pull out right behind me, his headlights flashing in the growing darkness. He was following me again. My hands tightened on the steering wheel, my mind racing. I couldn't go home. I couldn't let him know where I lived. My heart pounded as I tried to think of where to go. Someplace public. Somewhere with people. The streetlights blurred past as I sped through the small town, taking random turns, trying to lose him in the maze of streets. But every time I glanced in the mirror, his car was still there, close enough that I could see his silhouette through the windshield. My chest tightened with fear. He wasn't going to stop. I didn't know what he wanted or why he was doing this, but the terror was real and suffocating. I knew I had to get away from him, had to make sure he couldn't follow me any longer. So I made a split-second decision. There was a busy intersection ahead, and as I approached, the light turned yellow. I floored the gas pedal, speeding through the light just as it turned red. In the mirror, I saw him hesitate for a split second before slamming on the brakes, stopping at the intersection. Relief flooded through me as I watched his car shrink in the distance, the red light holding him back. I kept driving for several more blocks, my heart still racing, but the fear slowly ebbing away. I had lost him. I was safe. When I finally pulled into a well-lit gas station, my hands were still shaking. I parked and sat there for a moment, trying to catch my breath, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The fluorescent lights of the station cast long shadows across the pavement, and the hum of distant traffic filled the air. I pulled out my phone and dialed my best friend, my voice trembling as I recounted everything. The man, the following, the chase through the streets. She was horrified, telling me I should call the police, that I should go home and lock the doors. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. I would call the police, but not yet. I needed a moment to calm down, to breathe, to convince myself that it was really over. But even now, days later, I can't shake the feeling of his eyes on me. I can't forget the way he looked at me, the way he followed me like I was his prey. I haven't gone back to that Walmart. I haven't even gone shopping alone since then, because the truth is, I don't know what he wanted, and I don't know if he's still out there waiting for another chance. And that's the scariest part of all. I had no reason to think that day would be any different from any other shopping trip. It was a Saturday afternoon, and like many parents, I found myself at Walmart, ticking off my usual errands. My 3-year-old daughter, Lily, was with me, chattering away about a new toy she'd seen on TV, asking if we could just look at it while we were in the store. I agreed, mostly because it would keep her entertained. Besides, it wasn't unusual for us to stroll through the toy aisle before getting to the more boring parts of the store. It was a reward for her patience, a way for her to get excited before we moved on to groceries and household items. We'd been through this routine so many times before that I didn't think twice about it. We made our way through the store, me pushing the cart while Lily skipped alongside, her tiny sneakers lighting up with each step. She was my world, and nothing made me happier than seeing her so full of life. We reached the toy aisle, and Lily squealed with excitement, running ahead of me to explore the shelves stacked high with colorful boxes and dolls. I smiled, watching her dart from one toy to the next, picking things up and then putting them back as her attention shifted from one item to the next. For a moment, I let my guard down, my mind drifting as I checked my shopping list and thought about the rest of the errands I needed to get done. That's when it happened. I looked up from my list, expecting to see Lily just a few feet away, still immersed in her toy exploration. But she wasn't there. "Lily?" I called out, my voice light, not yet alarmed. Kids wander in stores all the time. I took a few steps down the aisle, expecting to find her just around the corner. No sign of her. I called her name again, a little louder this time. "Lily, where are you, sweetie?" Nothing. My heart skipped a beat, and the slight unease that had been lingering in the back of my mind grew stronger. I scanned the area, looking for any sign of her bright pink jacket or those light-up shoes. She couldn't have gone far. We were just in the toy aisle, and it was usually her favorite place to be. But the aisle was empty, and the silence was deafening. I started to walk faster, glancing into nearby aisles, my heartbeat quickening with each step. "Lily," I called, louder now, my voice betraying the rising panic in my chest. I darted around a corner, scanning the shelves, but all I saw were rows and rows of toys, mocking me with their stillness. My mind raced through 100 scenarios. She had wandered off to look at something else. Maybe she had followed another family thinking it was me, or she was playing hide and seek like she sometimes did when we shopped. But then, a different thought crept in, one that made my blood run cold. What if someone had taken her? I was about to grab my phone and call for help when I heard it. The sound of giggling, faint but unmistakable, coming from the next aisle over. Relief washed over me for a moment. There she was. I rushed around the corner, ready to scoop her up in my arms and scold her for running off like that. But when I turned into the next aisle, my relief turned to dread. Lily was standing there, but she wasn't alone. A woman was crouched beside her, holding her hand. The woman's back was to me, and her posture seemed friendly enough, but something about the scene felt wrong. Lily looked up at me as I approached, her face innocent and untroubled, but the woman didn't turn around right away. She just stayed crouched there, whispering something to my daughter that I couldn't hear. "Lily," I said, my voice more strained than I intended. "Come here, sweetie." The woman finally stood up, slowly, almost deliberately, and turned to face me. She was older, maybe in her 40s or 50s, with unkempt brown hair that hung loosely around her face. Her clothes were plain, baggy even, and her eyes didn't look right. There was a strange emptiness in them, like she wasn't fully present, like she wasn't seeing me at all. But what disturbed me most was the smile she gave me. Small, polite, and utterly void of warmth. "She's such a sweet little girl," the woman said, her voice soft but oddly flat. "I was just keeping her company while you finished shopping." I stepped closer, reaching for Lily's hand. "Thank you, but I've got her now." For a moment, the woman didn't let go. Her grip on Lily's hand remained firm, too firm, and I could feel my stomach twist in knots. Then, with an almost reluctant movement, she released Lily's hand, her fingers brushing against mine as I pulled my daughter to me. The contact sent a shiver down my spine. The woman didn't move. She stood there, staring at me with that empty smile. I forced a smile of my own, trying to hide the growing unease that was bubbling inside me. "Well, thanks again," I said, turning to leave. But before I could take more than a few steps, she spoke again. "She looks just like my daughter." I stopped in my tracks. Something about the way she said it sent a chill through me. I turned around slowly, pulling Lily closer. "What?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The woman's smile widened, and for a split second, I thought I saw something dark flash behind her eyes. "My daughter," she repeated. "She looks just like her. Same age, same hair, same smile." I stared at her, my heart pounding in my chest. There was something terribly wrong with this woman. I didn't know what, but every instinct I had was screaming at me to get out of there. "We need to go," I muttered to Lily, grabbing her hand tightly and pulling her toward the front of the store. I could feel the woman's eyes on me as I walked away. That sickening smile burned into the back of my mind. My heart was racing now, and I quickened my pace, practically dragging Lily along with me as we made our way to the checkout area. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting the woman to be following us, but she wasn't there. Not yet, anyway. I tried to keep calm as we moved through the store, but it was impossible. Every step felt like I was walking on the edge of a cliff, and at any moment I'd fall into something terrible. I needed to get out of there, to get Lily to safety. When we reached the checkout lanes, I practically threw our items onto the conveyor belt, my hands shaking as I fumbled for my wallet. The cashier gave me a strange look, probably wondering why I seemed so flustered, but I didn't care. All I could think about was getting out of that store as quickly as possible. "Mommy, why are we in such a hurry?" Lily asked, her innocent voice cutting through my panic. I forced a smile, trying to sound calm. "We just need to get home, sweetie. I don't want to be in the store anymore." As I paid for our items, I glanced around again, scanning the store for any sign of the woman. At first, I didn't see her, but then I spotted her near the exit, standing by the automatic doors, watching us. My blood turned to ice. She wasn't even pretending to do something else. She was just standing there, waiting. I grabbed the bags and took Lily's hand, heading straight for the doors. My heart was pounding in my ears, and every step felt like it took an eternity. I could feel her eyes on me, tracking our every move. As we approached the exit, I tried to act normal, tried to convince myself that she wasn't really waiting for us, but I knew she was. When we got closer, the woman stepped forward, her smile still plastered across her face. "Leaving already?" she asked, her voice too sweet, too rehearsed. "I didn't get to say goodbye to your daughter." I pulled Lily closer, shielding her behind me. "We're in a hurry," I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to stay calm. "Please leave us alone." Her smile faltered, just for a second, and something darker flickered across her face. "You don't need to be rude," she said, her tone suddenly cold. "I was just being friendly." I didn't respond. I didn't know what to say. All I knew was that I needed to get out of there. Now. I pushed past her, pulling Lily along with me, and we hurried through the automatic doors. I glanced over my shoulder one last time as we reached the car, and there she was, standing just inside the entrance, staring at us with those cold, empty eyes. We got into the car, and I locked the doors as soon as we were inside. My hands were shaking so badly that I struggled to start the engine. Lily, blissfully unaware of the danger, sat in her car seat, playing with a toy she'd grabbed on our way out. As we pulled out of the parking lot, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The parking lot was empty, the store fading into the distance behind us. It's been weeks since that day, but I can't shake the memory of her face. That smile. The way she looked at Lily like she was something precious, something she had a right to take. I think about her every time we go shopping, every time Lily wanders off for just a moment, and I wonder, what would have happened if I hadn't found her in time? Working the late shift at Walmart wasn't exactly the most glamorous job, but it paid the bills. There was something about those quiet hours after dark that felt both calming and unsettling. Fewer customers meant less chaos, but the store always felt eerily empty. Sometimes, it was just me and a few coworkers scattered across the vast aisles, the only sounds the hum of the fluorescent lights and the occasional beep of the self-checkout machines. That night felt no different, at least at first. It was a Tuesday, so the store was slow. The kind of night where you could go an hour without seeing a single customer. I was stationed at the customer service desk, mindlessly scrolling through my phone while waiting for something, anything to happen. Most of the regulars had already come and gone, and I was counting down the hours until the shift change when I could finally go home and forget about the monotony. That's when I saw him. At first, he didn't seem out of place. Just another late-night shopper, wandering the aisles with a cart that seemed mostly empty. He was tall, maybe in his mid-30s, with a scruffy beard and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He wore a plaid jacket and jeans, nothing out of the ordinary. But there was something about the way he moved, the way he lingered in certain areas, that made me glance up more than once. It wasn't that he was doing anything wrong, exactly. He wasn't causing trouble, wasn't making a scene. But his presence set me on edge. Maybe it was the way he kept looking around, like he was searching for someone. Or maybe it was just the way the store felt that night. Too quiet, too still. I tried to shake it off. It wasn't unusual to get odd customers in the middle of the night. You learn to expect a certain level of weirdness when you work late shifts at a place like Walmart. People come in for all sorts of reasons, and most of the time, they're harmless. But something about him felt different. It didn't take long for me to realize that he wasn't just shopping. He was pacing the aisles, going back and forth in a way that made no sense. I watched him on and off, trying not to make it obvious that I was paying attention, but the more I observed, the more unnerved I became. He wasn't picking anything up. He wasn't browsing. He was just there. And every time I glanced over, I could feel his eyes on me, like he was watching me in return. It was subtle at first, a glance here and there, but soon it became clear that he wasn't just wandering aimlessly. He was fixating. I couldn't shake the growing tension in my chest, the way my stomach tightened with each passing minute. My instincts were screaming at me that something wasn't right. I thought about calling over one of my coworkers just to have someone else nearby, but I didn't want to make a big deal out of nothing. Then he disappeared from view. 1 second, he was in the next aisle over, pacing with that same deliberate, unsettling rhythm, and the next, he was gone. I stood up a little straighter, my eyes scanning the store, trying to catch sight of him, but he had vanished. A chill ran down my spine. I told myself he had probably just left, gotten bored, and moved on. Maybe I was overreacting, letting my imagination run wild. But the uneasy feeling wouldn't go away. I stood up from the customer service desk and walked out toward the main aisle, trying to look casual as I scanned the store. The shelves casting long shadows under the harsh fluorescent lights. Everything felt wrong. Too quiet, too still. And then I saw him again. He was standing in one of the far aisles, near the back of the store, half hidden behind a display of cleaning supplies. Just standing there, watching me. My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't normal. He wasn't just a shopper. He was waiting for something. For me. I forced myself to keep walking, pretending like I hadn't noticed him, but my heart was racing. Every instinct screamed at me to find someone, anyone else. But I couldn't just leave. I still had hours left on my shift, and besides, I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of knowing he was scaring me. I made my way toward the back of the store, where the break room was. I needed to get off the floor, to put some distance between us, even if it was just for a few minutes. Maybe he'd leave if he saw that I wasn't paying attention. But just as I reached the break room door, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate. I froze, my hand on the door handle, my breath catching in my throat. I didn't want to turn around. I didn't want to see him standing there, so close. But I had no choice. I turned slowly, my heart pounding in my ears. He was standing just a few feet away. He didn't say anything, didn't move. He just stood there, staring at me with those cold, dark eyes. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to stay calm. For a moment, he didn't respond. He just kept watching me, his lips curling into a slight, unsettling smile. Then, slowly, he took a step forward. "I've been watching you," he said, his voice low and gravelly. My blood ran cold. I took a step back, my hand gripping the door handle tighter. "You need to leave," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Now." His smile widened, but he didn't move. "You're not scared, are you?" I didn't respond. My heart was pounding in my chest, my hands trembling. I knew I needed to get out of there to get help, but I was frozen in place, trapped by the weight of his gaze. Then, without warning, he lunged. The world seemed to slow down in that moment. I felt his hand brush against my arm, cold and clammy, as he reached for me. Instinct kicked in, and I shoved the door open, stumbling into the break room just as he lunged again. I slammed the door shut behind me, my hands shaking as I locked it. And for a moment I stood there, my back pressed against the door, trying to calm my racing heart. On the other side of the door, I could hear him. His breathing, slow and heavy, his footsteps shuffling as he moved closer. He didn't knock. He didn't try to force the door open. He just stood there, waiting. I grabbed my phone, my fingers fumbling as I dialed the number for security. The phone rang once, twice, and then a voice crackled through the speaker. "This is security. What's your emergency?" I explained the situation as quickly as I could, my voice shaking with fear. I told them about the man, about the way he had been following me, the way he had tried to grab me. They assured me that they were on their way, but I didn't feel any safer. Not with him standing right outside the door. Minutes passed in agonizing silence. The only sound was the faint shuffling of his feet outside the door, the steady rhythm of his breathing. I pressed myself harder against the door, praying that the lock would hold. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the noise stopped. I held my breath, straining to hear any sign of movement. But there was nothing. The shuffling had stopped. The breathing had stopped. It was as if he had vanished. Cautiously, I pressed my ear to the door, listening for any hint of sound. Still nothing. My heart pounded in my chest as I slowly unlocked the door, opening it just a crack. The hallway was empty. Security arrived a few minutes later, two burly men dressed in black uniforms, their faces stern and serious. They swept through the store, searching every aisle, every corner. But the man was gone. He had disappeared. I sat in the break room, my hands still shaking as I explained everything to them. They took my statement, nodded in understanding, but I could tell they didn't quite believe me. To them, it was just another weirdo, another late-night incident that would fade away by morning. But I knew better. I knew what I had felt, the terror that had gripped me when I saw him standing there, the way he had spoken to me, the way he had tried to grab me. I knew that he hadn't just been some random customer. He had been watching me, hunting me. I didn't finish my shift that night. I went home early, still shaken from the encounter, my mind racing with what-ifs and could-have-beens. For days, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still out there, watching, waiting. I never saw him again, but that didn't bring me any comfort. I knew that he hadn't just disappeared. He was still out there somewhere. And I knew that I had been lucky, because the next time, whoever he found might not be so lucky. If these stories gave you chills, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe for more terrifying tales. Got a scary Walmart experience of your own? Drop it in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a new upload, and stay alert next time you're out running errands. Remember, the scariest moments often happen in the most ordinary places. See you in the next nightmare.